I recently transferred to a Louisiana police department. I don't wish to share the name of the city where I work because this tale cannot get back to my boss. I'm certain she would think I wasn't all there if she heard what I saw in the bayou while looking for a body. The new city was a bit of a culture shock, and the humid weather near did me in for the first few months. Before the Bayou case started, I met an odd person while on my lunch break that gave me hints of how strange this new city really was. There is a fish shack nearby the office. It was mostly outdoor table space to eat, but I normally brought my lunch back to eat at my desk. I hated sitting outside in the sun trying to enjoy a meal. While I was walking past the seating area, I noticed something that made me pause. A boy, barely a teen, was sulking around the trash can, and I mean sulking. The fish shack was pretty much a fast food place and people would toss away their trash outside at the end of the meal. The boy watched as a couple got up and tossed a styrofoam container away with a few fries and a small piece of a fried fish inside. He waited until they took a few steps away until he quickly pulled the container out. Before he could eat the scraps, I walked over to him. "Hey, don't eat that," I told him, and he was so startled he dropped the container. I didn't mean to scare him or sound so harsh. Handing him my lunch, I bent down to pick up the garbage and threw it away again. "Here, eat mine if you are hungry. You really shouldn't eat trash, you could get sick." He looked up looking confused as if this was the first nice thing anyone ever did for him. I looked him over for some signs of abuse and wondered if I could get his name, then I could look into his situation. Despite the heat, he was wearing a sweater 3 sizes too big. The deep V-neck made the shirt slip off his narrow shoulder. His hair was sandy color and messily cut at his shoulders. Freckles spotted his nose and shoulders. He wasn't dirty and I didn't see any bruises, so that was a good sign. Necklaces of fishing line hung from his neck, and I didn't know if he picked up some trash to wear or if this was a new fashionable trend. "Are you sure I can have this?" he asked in a small voice, looking around as if he was committing a crime. "Of course. What's your name?" "I'm Officer Anthony Turner." I flashed my badge, hoping it made him feel safe talking with me. He slowly took out a fry and ate it, debating on if he wanted to talk. "Catfish," he said finally. The one word confused me. I did order fried catfish with a side of fries, but it took me a few seconds to clue and he didn't mean my lunch. "Is that your legal name?" I said, and he nodded. I've heard worse names since I'd arrived in the city. Maybe his father was really into fishing. Was his sibling named Crawdad or something? Smiling at my own joke, I gestured for him to sit down at the wooden table to talk with me for a while. Catfish didn't look as if he was starving, but he must have a good reason for trying to eat from the trash. "So, Catfish, what's up with trying to get table scraps? I don't mean to pry into your private life, but seeing something like that makes me a bit worried." He listened as he slowly started to eat, then stuffed his face full of fries to the point he nearly choked. I gladly handed over my cup of iced tea. It appeared that whoever raised this kid dropped the ball somewhere. I've wanted to try some food from here for ages. It smells great, but I don't have any money. Oh, wait, I've found a few coins here and there. They're not on me, so I don't know how much they're worth. I guess I just got desperate, he explained after drinking nearly the whole cup of iced tea in one gulp. "Thank you for giving me this. It's a nice treat, and I'll pay you back one way or another." He gave me a wide smile that looked a bit too long for his face. Normally large mouths look unsettling, but his made him similar to a happy frog. Catfish was a good kid at least. It made me worry that someone may take advantage of him, and was glad I was the one who spotted him first. I gave him a wave at the offer to pay me back for lunch. "It's fine. I don't mind buying you a meal, but can I ask if you are doing alright? Are you eating enough at home? And it's a Tuesday, isn't it? Shouldn't you be in school?" I sounded like a worried parent. These questions would be enough to scare anyone off, but he listened while eating a bit more carefully this time. The first bite of the fried catfish made him so happy he tapped his feet on the ground, causing his flip-flops to make a slapping sound for a few seconds. After he could focus, he went into answering my questions. "I am eating just fine. I can catch enough in the bayou to stay well fed most days. I was taking care of someone who couldn't be alone, so I couldn't go to school. I don't have any plans of moving, so I don't really need schooling. The bayou provides me with everything I need aside from the rare treat like this meal." He was smiling again, but I crossed my arms thinking it over. He appeared happy and I should drop the whole thing. I felt as if he was a bit too young to be on his own. I've heard about people living in the bayou before, but I always assumed they were old hermit types. As long as he was healthy, it was none of my business, no matter how I felt about it. "Do you have a cell phone or a computer at home?" I asked, and he shook his head. "How about you meet me here every Tuesday and I'll buy you lunch?" His face lit up. Quickly he forced down his excitement, shaking his head, feeling guilty accepting such an offer. "It is a kind offer, but it's hard for me to accept things for free," he admitted. "You can catch things in the bayou, right? My partner makes killer crawdads, but never have time to catch fresh ones. How about you bring a few over and we can do a trade?" I wasn't even finished speaking when a hand shot out for us to seal the deal. I let out a laugh and shook his small hand. Catfish now didn't hide how happy he was to try different things on the menu without needing to dig around in the trash can. My lunch break was about up, and I should have been back at the office a few minutes ago. I double-checked to make sure Catfish was really doing alright, and we made a promise to meet next week. I wanted to get his last name but didn't push for it. Next time we spoke, I would ask. When Tuesday rolled around, I met him at the fish shack as promised. I ordered whatever he wanted to try. This time it was a fish burger with extra everything on top. I may have been spoiling him a little. The only problem came when he upheld his end of the bargain and brought a tub of live crawdads. The tub was sealed with air holes on the lid. I heard them angrily scuttling around and didn't expect them to be still alive and out for revenge. I didn't have a plan of how to deal with them at the office, but didn't bring it up to Catfish as he happily ate his lunch. We parted ways and I took the tub back to the office. My partner very confused to why I gave him a bunch of live crawdads in the middle of the workday. He lived close by, so he could swing by his place to hand them over to his wife to deal with it. I didn't have the heart to tell him more would be coming every Tuesday. For a few weeks, I spent meeting up with a boy I barely knew anything about. He refused to give me a last name, saying he forgot it. I didn't pressure him into telling me anything he didn't want to. The only facts I knew about him is he lived off the land. His parents were long gone, and he was very skilled at catching crawdads. To my partner's dismay, our Tuesdays would have continued on like that if a big case didn't break. A girl went missing, then her body was found in the bayou 2 days later, then another poor girl, and then another, but her body wasn't recovered. Because of the case, I became too busy to meet Catfish at lunch. He fully understood and told me he was rooting for me to find the killer. I wasn't a detective and only had a very small part of the case, but still wanted to do my best to help. I only chased down leads the detectives didn't have time for or took over different office tasks to free up other manpower. The constant overtime lasted for 3 months until a huge break happened. A suspect was identified. From what I heard, he tried taking a girl on her way home from school. What he didn't know was she took mixed martial arts since she was a child. A high school student took him by surprise and kicked the shit out of him, no other way to put it. Sadly, he got back into his car and drove off but left behind enough blood to get a name from previous assault charges. This man was careful enough not to leave any DNA behind on the bodies and messed up by picking the wrong victim. We didn't know for certain it was the same guy, but felt the odds were pretty good it was. Unfortunately, the suspect was not at home when a few officers did a house call. A boat was registered in his name. His car parked at the docks with fresh blood left behind, but his boat nowhere to be seen. From witness statements, he'd gone into the bayou and yet to come back to the dock. So, we had an idea of who killed those girls and went in the bayou. Only 2 bodies were recovered and each were found in popular cat fishing areas. We had a murderer and 1 more body to find. I volunteered to be a part of the search party, even though I'd never been in the bayou before and well, never been a part of a search party either. I was paired up with someone who did have experience in both. The department only cared about having manpower out looking and didn't care if I didn't know what I was doing. Before going out with the search party, I listened to some advice and bought some high rubber boots. They turned out to not be tall enough, but at least they kept my feet somewhat dry. Going out into the swamp chasing down a killer was nerve-wracking. I listened to the briefing very carefully. Everyone was paired off and we double-checked equipment. My new partner was impressed. I brought along spare batteries for the radio, but shook his head when I'd forgotten the bug spray. We shared some after introducing ourselves to each other. I'm Trevor Kelsey. Just stay close and watch out for gators, he said, and wasn't joking about the gators. I was extra nervous from those words. I took my time shaking his hand, putting off going into the swamp. I finally released Kelsey's hand so I could follow him to the boat that would take us to our search area. The bug spray didn't do much. My arms itched and my clothing was damp from the humidity. The search was already miserable and we barely gotten started. Keeping all my complaints silent, we walked along in the swamp, my feet sinking every step. Our team was looking for the last missing girl. It would be nice if we could find and catch the culprit, but everyone thought he was long gone or hiding somewhere nicer than the swamp. Since the other bodies were found in fishing areas, the rest needed to be checked over. Some places could only be reached by boat, but sometimes you could walk part of the way depending on the water level. I scratched my arms, convinced bugs were biting away at me. Sweat dripped from my nose as Kelsey kept his pace slow so his partner could keep up. Sorry I'm slow, I apologized after we needed to stop because my foot was stuck. It took me a minute to get it free to carry on. Kelsey shook his head, not looking upset for having me along. Everyone has a first time doing something. We had odd numbers, so unless you came along I would either be alone or sit this one out. At least you're willing to slog through all of this. I've been with guys who have had 10 years of searching the bayou under their belt, and they bitch about every trip. I let out a short laugh, feeling better that I wasn't the worst partner he's been stuck with. As we walked, I kept my eyes and ears focused, trying to see any sign of human life. The bayou was almost like an alien planet for someone like myself. The air was heavier than I've ever felt before. Chirping sounds off in the distance rattled my nerves, and every ripple of the water made me tense up, expecting a gator to come at us any second. I didn't understand how anyone could live here. Did catfish really stay in the bayou, or was this place a small shack just on the edge of it? This place was beautiful and yet felt dangerous. Kelsey noticed how nervous I was and started up a conversation. Scared something is going to jump out and get ya? He asked in a joking tone. Actually, yes, I admitted with no shame. He laughed at me, shaking his head. If a small kid like my lunch friend could live out here, it couldn't be all that dangerous, right? I really wanted that to be the case as my foot yet again got caught. I heard a sound off in the distance before Kelsey started speaking. My head turned away from him. I half listened, trying to find the source of the other noise. Don't worry about it. The key thing is to say. I was looking off into the swamp through the mossy trees when Kelsey suddenly stopped talking. When I turned to ask him what was wrong, I felt my heart nearly stop. The man that was a few steps away a second ago was gone. Not even any ripples on the water remained. That didn't make any sense. He was right in front and didn't have any time to walk away. There weren't even any trees wide enough to hide behind. Wanting to believe this was a prank on the new guy, I stayed in the same spot scanning the trees. Kelsey, this isn't funny. Can you come out so we can do our job? I shouted off into the bayou, trying to keep my voice even. Only the sounds of the swamp answered back. I felt sweat clinging to my back, but this time not from the heat. I called his name out again, trying not to freak out. A mixture of fear and a simmering rage spilled into my stomach. Grabbing my radio, I started to call in the fact I had lost my partner. Kelsey may get an earful about this dumb prank, but he deserved it. The radio crackled and then died. Frantically replacing the batteries gave the same result. Pulling out my phone, I felt my hand start to tremble when it didn't even turn on. I charged it right before we left. It should be at 90% at least, and yet it was dead. Suddenly I felt like the final person in a horror movie. Shaking my head in an attempt to collect myself, I thought of what to do next. A blur of motion in the distance caught my eyes. Something dark moved between some trees and it looked human. Hey Kelsey, I called out full well knowing it couldn't be him. It was a bad idea, but I started after the figure that was now hidden behind the twisted trees. I only got a few steps when I heard a splash behind and I turned to see another figure dart behind a different tree. I almost missed it. This wasn't good. Whoever was messing with me, there was more than one of them. My hand went to my holster at my side. I've drawn my weapon a handful of times and only shot at a person once before. Whatever was happening, I did not like it in the slightest. I'm with the police. We're on official business here looking for a body, so please do not get in the way of an investigation. I called out, unsure of what else to say. A chattering sound came. It sounded almost like laughter. I was not going to take the friendly approach any longer. Weapon drawn, I scanned the trees looking for more of those dark figures as that horrible sound echoed around. Air caught in my lungs when the sound stopped and I saw the cause. A massive shadow started to swim through the water in my direction. I scrambled trying to find solid ground, which was rare in that swamp. The water was only ankle deep in spots. Something large enough to cast such a shadow should be too big to swim in such shallow water. Taking my eyes off the dark shape, I looked up trying to see if what I was seeing was a shadow of a plane or a really weird cloud. Nothing but the treetops and clear blue sky. A splashing sound jerked my attention back down. Convinced an alligator finally decided I was a tasty snack. Weapon raised, I almost fired. What I saw made me lower my handgun and all the tension fade from my shoulders. I was surprised but didn't think of him as a threat. Catfish, what the hell are you doing here? I demanded in a stressed voice. The boy I became friends with was coming out of the swamp, water dripping from his loose clothing. How did he sneak up on me, and why did it look like he was coming out of a much deeper part of the water when it was so shallow? You really shouldn't be on this side. What are you doing here? He said, tossing my question back at me. My job. I know you live in the bayou, but no, never mind. Have you seen my partner? He was just here. Looking around, I almost expected to see Kelsey again, or at least those figures off in the distance. I was so strung out I didn't even register what Catfish first said. He was twisting the edge of his sweater trying to get some of it dry. A friendly face was nice even if I didn't know what was going on. No, I haven't seen any human besides yourself lately. I heard your voice and came over really not expecting to see you here. I guess you're after that other man that came through a little bit ago, dropping a dead girl off. Not sure where the girl is though. Staring at the boy, my mouth nearly dropped open. Catfish might know where the suspect was. He was a dangerous man and really hoped he didn't see the boy and was coming after the only witness. And what did he mean by the only human? I knew kids his age could be a bit weird thinking they're vampires and such, but Catfish didn't seem like the type. Some weird stuff has been going on. Please don't add to it. Did the other man see you? Do you think we're safe? He didn't see me, he's dead. The others living in the bayou got him. I suppose it's your job to get proof of his death. Let's do that, and I'll guide you out of here. I do owe you after all. So much for not adding to the weirdness. Catfish was far too chill, telling me about a man's death. That fact startled me more than anything else he hinted at. The boy started to walk easily through the swamp, leaving me to helplessly follow slowly after him. What do you mean by others? Who killed him? No matter how hard I tried, I was unable to catch up to the boy. He walked as if the swamp was normal ground. I kept getting stuck and the heat wasn't helping. Catfish didn't look as if he wanted to answer my very important question. With a shrug, he nodded his head off towards the trees. You might have seen little glimpses of them. You know, others. I don't talk to them much, so I don't know what they are, he said with another shrug. What the hell was going on? I was out here trying to find a missing girl to bring some sort of closure to her family so they could bury her. Now I was following behind a boy I thought I knew. He was implying there was things besides bugs and gators in this place. All of this was a prank. For my own sanity, it needed to be one. Catfish, you've been talking about weird stuff since I saw you. What are you getting at? What did I stumble into? He stopped walking to look over his shoulder. Our eyes met and I noticed how dark and deep they appeared. For a moment, those eyes were not one of a child, but of something much older. When he turned, a smile was on his face, and the expression that made him look like a happy little frog made me relax. Whatever was going on, someone was on my side. Let's just get proof of that man's body for now. After you're in a safe spot, I'll explain things a little more. That was acceptable. If he did start explaining what was going on, I doubted I would understand it or even want to hear it. That moment, I just wanted to focus on doing my job. The weird stuff could wait. At least, I wanted the weird stuff to wait. As I struggled through the water and over spongy ground, the sky started to grow darker. That made us both nervous. It should still be only noon, and there was no rain in the forecast. The bayou was bad enough. Walking through it in the rain would be a nightmare. It felt like an hour of trudging along and sweating until Catfish finally stopped. He pointed a few feet in front to a bundle of clothing. At first, I didn't notice those rags still had a human inside. The smell was awful. Pulling my shirt over my nose, I walked towards it, Catfish staying behind. He shouldn't see a terrible sight like this. Normally insects would make a meal out of a body out in the open like this, but none touched the corpse. The body was face down, meaning I needed to flip it over to try and confirm the man's identity. I didn't want to contaminate the scene any more than I already did. Pulling out my phone, I checked up, begging it to turn on so I could take photos and document the position of the body. A miracle happened and it flickered to life. Wasting no time, I tried calling my boss and then 911, but nothing went through. At least I could take the photos I wanted. When I thought I got enough photos, I finally forced myself to grab a stick to roll the body over. My stomach tightened and I nearly lost my light lunch as the corpse bobbed in the shallow water. He wasn't dead for very long. I could tell that much. Right away I knew this was our suspect, but was unable to snap a photo of his face right off the bat. I lost my lunch when my eyes landed on his torn open and empty torso. A wild animal got into him first, the water washing away most of the blood, leaving the corpse's flesh pale. In training I'd seen bodies, but never was he one to be the first to discover one. As I was recovering, a sound came from my hip that nearly made me jump out of my skin. My radio crackled to life. It was only static, but it gave some hope of getting someone over here to help. Because I was so focused on the radio, I wasn't paying any attention to Catfish suddenly moving closer. "Come in, this is." Only a few words left my lips as the soggy ground from under my feet was gone. My body sank like a brick in deep murky water. The foul-tasting water entered my mouth before I could hold my breath. Sinking down, the water became colder, and I nearly screamed when something touched my ankle. It was a hand, and at first, I assumed it was someone trying to help, until more hands came clawing through the cold darkness, grabbing any part they could. I wanted to scream. If I did, I would die. My lung wouldn't hold for very long. A short while ago I was with Kelsey, and my only worries was an alligator or a serial killer. Now the Bayou reached out to take my life, and there was nothing I could do about it. My arms were pinned from the countless hands. I couldn't even try to struggle to the surface or grab my handgun as a blunt object to attack the cold hands. Regrets flashed through my mind. Lungs about to burst, my brain went through everything it knew, trying to find a way out of this impossible situation. Just as my time ran out, the hands let go to scatter back into the dark. Someone else took hold to save a scared novice officer from nearly dying. Coughing and sputtering out the grimy water, the ordeal left it impossible to see my savior for a few minutes. Yes, I was thankful to be alive, but confused over what the hell happened. "Turner, are you alright?" "What the hell, man?" Kelsey's voice cut through the panic of nearly dying. He dragged me to better ground as I coughed up the rest of the water I nearly swallowed. Rubbing my eyes clear, I looked over the scene. He stood looking as panicked as I felt. My gear ruined, but he was already on a working radio, calling for backup. "What?" I started, voice too hoarse to speak. "We were just walking along and you just got pulled under." "Did a gator, Christ on a stick." "When did that body get there?" Kelsey's attention was directed towards the dead man floating near where he saved me. Neither of us spoke until the other teams arrived, thinking it was an alligator attack and not a body retrieval. The entire discovery was impossible to explain, so we both just went with whatever questions that were asked, giving the only answers we could. My boot was missing and pants torn, so it was assumed an alligator did grab me to pull me under. The vague answers sounded as if I was in shock over nearly losing my leg and my life. The killer was found, and his last victim was also recovered by a different, more experienced search team. After his body was found, enough evidence came to light proving he was the killer, and the case was closed. His official cause of death was an animal attack. The resolution felt a little bitter. However, that man was no longer able to harm another person. Waiting till the next Tuesday was agony. At first, I thought the strange events and meeting Catfish in the Bayou was a false memory form nearly drowning, but it felt too damn real to dismiss until I saw Catfish again and asked him some questions. He was late and I didn't think he was going to show. For a while I worried his entire existence was false. Sitting in the hot sun sipping on an iced tea, I waited until my lunch break was nearly up. Finally, Catfish sat on the other side of the table, a kind smile on his face. "I guess you have questions," he started. "A few. I don't really know where to start. I guess, are you human?" "Nope." The reply came with no hesitation. "I'm just a catfish." Now that I was looking at him more, he did have fish traits. I was kicking myself mentally for not noticing before. His oversized sweater sleeves, looking like fins, his messy hair poking out on both sides of his head almost like whiskers, and his freckles the same kind of spots a catfish skin may have. His smile now looked more like a fish than a frog. The more I looked, he even wore fishing line and lures. How obvious could he be? Just a catfish, I repeated, looking the boy over. Normally humans can't see me. You have really good sight, and because you're interacting with me in my human form, others can see me as well. But the issue is your sight was too good. You accidentally got onto the other side of the bayou where I live, and the other things hunt. If I didn't drag you back to your side, then you would have been taken by the same ones that killed that man. I'm not the type to really stick my nose in business like that, but you bought me food and I did owe you. Sitting back, his answers played through my mind. It explained why Catfish didn't bring any crawdads this time. We were even. Hell, I owed him now. In a way, Catfish only gave a vague description of what happened and what he was. It was good enough for me. I didn't want to know about supernatural things happening deep into the swamp. But if I stayed at the department, I may need to go back into the bayou again. Moving and finding a new job sounded like such a hassle when there was a better option. If I buy you lunches, would you be able to keep me from going onto your side of the bayou if I need to search it again for work? I asked, hopeful. Catfish made a show of humming over the idea. When the smells of the fish shack drifted over on the wind, he broke down, unable to keep up the act. With a sheepish smile, he gave a small nod. If you make it Tuesdays and Fridays, I can make sure you don't slip up again. Reaching out my hand, we shook on it. My wallet may take a hit, but it was better than uprooting my life or dying in the swamp. Plus, Catfish was a nice kid. In the very least, he deserved a good meal twice a week. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.